Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith has been tabbed as an early favorite to be the next head coach of the UNC Tar Heel football program. Could it happen? I'll be breaking it down on today's edition of Steelers Talk. And then by the end of today's show, I'll let you guys know some potential replacements for Arthur Smith if he does, in fact, go to Chapel Hill. But before we get into today's content, go ahead and get down there in the comments section and get us started today by answering today's question. Will Arthur Smith be with the Pittsburgh Steelers next year? Super simple question. Simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section to get us started today. So if you guys didn't know, guys, the Tar Heels did fire Mac Brown as their football head coach earlier this week, and they will be beginning their search for their next head coach over the next several weeks and months here as they prepare for the future of their program heading into the 2025 season. And Arthur Smith is a guy that has been tabbed as an early favorite to helm that program here in the future. He is a former UNC Tar Heel himself. He used to play guard for them back in the early 2000s. And there's been a lot of people speculating that Smith could be very interested in the UNC job if it was offered to him. This is what Andy Staples from On3, which is a sports talk website, had to say about why it makes sense for Smith to go to UNC. Smith played at North Carolina from 2001 through 2005 before becoming a graduate assistant under John Bunting. He then embarked on an NFL coaching career that led to a head coaching stint with the Atlanta Falcons, where he went 21-30 from 2021 through 2023. Smith landed this season with the Steelers, where he has juggled Russell Wilson and Justin Fields at quarterback. Smith is the son of FedEx founder and chairman Fred Smith. In the great search for corporate NIL money in the revenue share era, that could be quite the connection. And honestly, guys, especially that NIL connection with FedEx, that could make a lot of sense for Arthur Smith going back to his alma mater to really make that into a premier college football destination for some of the top players in the country. And I really do think that's a big brand. You know, the Jordan brand is obviously very connected with UNC. You got the Powder Blues, man. You got the great jerseys. You got a really great fan base as well. And then plus, Arthur obviously has a connection emotionally to UNC. So would he want to make that jump from the NFL to college? There's a lot of extra hoopla that college head coaches have to deal with now. NIL money, transfer portal, younger kids. You know, it's a lot more than just football making that jump from an NFL coach to a college head coach. And here in Pittsburgh, he can just worry about ball. He can just talk about, you can just worry about the players and the scheme and all that stuff. So I don't necessarily know where Arthur's interests lie there. But if he does make that jump from pro to college, I do think it would be for a job like the North Carolina Tar Heels. And, you know, personally, guys, I wouldn't mind a change at offensive coordinator. I really wouldn't. Now, Arthur Smith, I don't think has done such a terrible job here in Pittsburgh where, like, you got to replace him or you're going to fire him at the end of the season or something like that. And I think that he has been much improved from what this team had last year with Matt Canada, Mike Sullivan, and Eddie Faulkner leading the way offensively. But he's still not the ideal option, in my opinion, man. He's been far from ideal. There have been issues with what he has had here in Pittsburgh and what he has done as the offensive play caller. You take a look at the offensive stats and ranks for this football team so far this year, and, you know, they've been 15th in points per game. That is pretty much dead even and right average, smack dab in the middle of the National Football League. Then there's a lot of categories where they're ranking below average, right? Yards per play, red zone offense, and then the giveaways have been really good. But that's really something that's come with Arthur Smith's scheme for a very, very long time. And I do think as someone that watches every single snap of Steelers film every single week, you know, there's certainly opportunities that are not being used by Arthur Smith, particularly in the first half. This is, and particularly on early downs, too. This one comes from Matt Williamson here, who put this out today. He says, on early downs, Pittsburgh's offense generates just 4.8 yards per play, 31st in the league. 52.5% of the Steelers' set of downs reach third down. That is 30th in the league. So just not doing a good enough job picking up first downs and picking up good gains and big chunks on first and second down. It's putting this offense behind the sticks and behind the eight ball a little bit. Then Daniel Valente, we talked about this on a show 2 days ago here, where he said the Steelers offense in the first half of games are tied for 27th in average points at just 8.4. They're 31st in success rate, and they're tied for 25th in EPA per play. So that's not good whatsoever, guys. That needs to improve moving forward. And if Arthur Smith did go to UNC, I do think that, you know, having another opportunity to hire another offensive coordinator that could be even better than Arthur Smith and upgrade yet again here in Pittsburgh is something that I would be very intrigued by in the months to come. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. How good of a job do you think Arthur Smith has done so far this year? Give his performance as the OC of the Pittsburgh Steelers a grade between A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know what you guys are thinking down there in the comments section. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by grading Arthur Smith's performance. For me personally, guys, this might seem a little bit low because the Steelers are sitting with an 8-3 record, but I'm going to give it a C+, man. And there's a number of issues that I see on film when I watch the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively that I think could be a lot better, especially if he ends up leaving and you could bring in somebody maybe more suited for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Some of my issues with Art at this point, guys, is I do think that the points per game is a little bit higher than some of the other metrics, and I think the reason for that is because the special teams has given this team a lot of short fields, which this offense has certainly benefited from, plus the great defense gives the Steelers consistently really good field position, which certainly helps the points per game metric. Then I also think he has some very frustrating misuses of personnel. What I mean by that, guys, is that he'll put guys in weird positions. Like he'll run Van Jefferson out on a go route, and he'll make him like the primary read, or he'll put Calvin Austin III on like a slot fade, which is not what he does well. Right? He puts people in positions to not have success based on the way he uses his personnel, and it's super frustrating when I watch the film at times. He's also super predictable on early downs. We just talked about how the Steelers are not very successful on early downs, particularly in the first half this year. It's because people know he's going to be running the football, all right? Plain and simply, it's either that or it's going to be a really short pass so defenses can play super aggressive on those early downs. Also, he lacks creativity in the drop back passing game. He's not on the same level as guys like McVay and Shanahan and all these other guys and Andy Reid that can really dial up these great drop back passing concepts. Arthur Smith, that's just not really his thing. And then the final thing here is that there's really a lack of solid red zone play calling and design where there's spacing is all out of whack. He's not giving Russell Wilson, or for that matter, Justin Fields, enough options in the red zone, and it's leading to the 30th ranked red zone offense in the National Football League right now. So I do have kind of a plethora of issues with Arthur Smith, and where I'm at with him, guys, is that I don't think he's done a bad enough job where you fire him after one season, especially if you win the division or, you make it to the playoffs and you win a playoff game. I don't think you're going to fire Art if he doesn't end up leaving, but I also won't say no, or I won't be super upset if he does decide to take the UNC head coaching job and the Pittsburgh Steelers have another opportunity to upgrade at this very crucial position with a defensive head coach. So next up here on the Steelers Talk, potential Arthur Smith replacements. We'll talk about a bunch of names that will most likely be available next offseason. So if Arthur Smith does leave Pittsburgh for Chapel Hill, who are the guys that I think the Steelers should go pursue? I'll answer that question here in just a second. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks, which is the best place to get real money, sports action, all on your phone this football season. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Also, Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. So let's take a look at my Prize Picks lineup for this weekend's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to take the more on passing yards for Russell Wilson, the more on receiving yards for T. Higgins, and the more on receiving yards for George Pickens. If you guys want to get in on the action right now, you can download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's $50 instantly when you use code CLNS after playing your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, run your game. So now let's get into some potential Arthur Smith replacements here. Now, obviously, if Art doesn't go to UNC, he's not interested in making that jump to college, which is certainly possible. I would say it's more likely than not that he is back as the OC of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's sounding like Art might have a little bit of interest in this UNC job. And if that proves to be true and he ends up leaving, there's certainly people out there that I think that would do a great job here in Pittsburgh. So first, let's talk about the West Coast guys, all right? Because the Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay trees are dominating offensive football and offensive coaching in the National Football League today. Out of 32 NFL teams, 13 of them run either a Sean McVay style or a Kyle Shanahan style of the third generation of the West Coast offense. So if you were going to get one of those guys, what does that look like? Well, when it comes to Sean McVay, what he likes to run is a lot of 11 personnel, which means 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back on the field. He also bases out of outside zone. He really does a lot of play action bootlegs off of that outside zone action. We see that a lot here in Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith. He's very similar in that way. And then he also really prioritizes flood concepts in his drop back passing game with backside digs on the backside there. Matthew Stafford is one of, if not the best quarterback in football, and hitting that backside dig, and it won Sean McVay a Super Bowl. Then we get to the disciples here that could be available for the offensive coordinator position available to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Zach Taylor might be getting fired. He used to be the offensive coordinator there in L.A. under Sean McVay before he got the Bengal job. Mike LaFleur is the current OC there in Los Angeles. He was a former OC there with the New York Jets before he got fired. Thomas Brown is currently manning up the offense in Chicago with Caleb Williams after Shane Waldron got fired. He's a big McVay guy. He was the assistant head coach to McVay for many years. And then Wes Phillips and Josh McCown are both with Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings, who have had a ton of success since KOC ended up going up north to Minnesota. Then the other branch of the third generation of the West Coast offense is the Kyle Shanahan tree, where they like to put bigger bodies on the field, 2 tight ends instead of going with kind of the lighter 11 personnel that the McVay offenses like to use. They also run a lot more power and gap stuff than McVay's offenses do. They still run a lot of outside zone. Any West Coast offense is going to run a lot of outside zone. They're going to do play action bootlegs, but Shanahan is a little bit more multiple in his run scheme. Play action misdirection is really his thing. The leak concepts, the Yankee concepts, all this stuff to kind of put defenses out of place is really what these Shanahan-style offenses are known for, and they really attack the middle of the field. You talk about guys like Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, and more. They really attack the middle of the field in these kinds of offenses, and you really need a quarterback to attack the middle of the field if you run this style of scheme. And now the disciples out there that could be available here for Pittsburgh, Clint Kubiak. They just fired Dennis Allen, so Kubiak's going to be available next offseason. Chris Forster is the current run game coordinator and offensive line coach there in San Francisco. Now, he's had some personal issues in the past, so maybe the Steelers don't want to bring him in. But on the one hand, nobody's going to want to poach him because of those previous issues that he's had. Frank Smith, the current offensive coordinator under Mike McDaniel there in Miami, is going to be an option. Darrell Bevell actually used to be the offensive coordinator for Mr. Russell Wilson when they won a Super Bowl together back in Seattle. He's the current QB coach in Miami. And then Brian Greasy, the quarterback's coach in San Francisco. He's done a good job with Brock Purdy developing him. And honestly, guys, if I'm being honest here, Russell Wilson isn't a fantastic fit for the true West Coast offense because he doesn't throw the ball over the middle all that much. He likes to go way down the field, and he likes to bomb it way down the field, and that's what he likes to do. So I think that the more ideal offensive fit for Russell Wilson is more of a run-and-shoot style of defense or offense where you go power run game, you go play action, and you throw the ball deep down the field. And honestly, Arthur Smith, who's more of like a traditional, Mike Shanahan-style West Coast kind of offensive coordinator, has had to adjust his scheme a little bit to be more like a run-and-shoot offense because that's really what Russell Wilson likes to do, and that's really where he thrives as a player because he really doesn't like to throw over the middle of the field all that often. And honestly, guys, I wouldn't be opposed to hiring a guy in the West Coast scheme there, whether it be McVay or Shanahan. I really wouldn't be opposed to that. But I do think if you're going to hire somebody like that, you have to have somebody that's willing to adapt their scheme to Russell Wilson's strengths and weaknesses to really make sure that this offense can be the best that it can be with Russell Wilson under center. And it does sound like Russ is going to be back next year and he's going to sign a multi-year contract with Pittsburgh. And this is really what his ideal offense would look like, guys. You have a power run game, whether that's with zone, with gap scheme, or whether that's with both. If you can really have a good run game, they had it in Seattle. They're having it a little bit here in Pittsburgh. And whenever there's a good run game paired with Russell Wilson, it usually leads to good things. Also, balance under center and shotgun, all right? So you want those play action deep shots, whether it's from under center or whether it's from shotgun, doesn't really matter. Russ is really good at getting those deep shots going. Also, he's really good on the run still. He's still very good on bootlegs and stuff like that. So you can absolutely implement that kind of stuff. But, he's also really good with the option route stuff. He did that in Seattle for years with Tyler Lockett, where they just said, hey, Tyler, go find open space in the zone against this coverage, and I'm going to throw it to you. All right? Russell Wilson is awesome at that kind of stuff. So if you can get a guy that likes option routes, that could certainly work with Russ's skill set, especially with a guy like Calvin Austin III, who's very similar to Tyler Lockett and his skill set. And then somebody that's willing to dip into the empty game as well. Russ is very comfortable being the only quarterback back there, spread things out, being able to diagnose a defense pre-snap. He's very good at all those things. So whoever you bring in has to be really, really good at doing all these things to get the most out of Russell Wilson. So without further ado, let's get to my top 10 OC candidates here if Arthur Smith decides to go to Chapel Hill. First, we'll go to Eric Bieniemy here, who is the current OC in UCLA. He's a Super Bowl winning play caller with the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, he did call plays, not Andy Reid. He ended up going to Washington. Things didn't work out with Sam Howell, but I still think his coaching style, he's a very old school type of coach. He's friends with Mike Tomlin. I could certainly see Bieniemy being an option if Arthur decides to go elsewhere. Another guy that I think could fit is Byron Leftwich, okay? Bruce Arians is retired, but Leftwich is the guy that Arians swears by. He is his protege. He's currently a free agent, so he hasn't been picked up by anybody, but he runs kind of a more traditional run and shoot, does a lot of option route stuff. I think he would fit really well with Russell Wilson. Plus, he's a former Steeler and has that connection to Mike Tomlin. Number 8, Zach Taylor. Now, Zach Taylor is kind of a weird one because he kind of adapted his scheme for Joe Burrow when he drafted him, and he really did a good job with that. The offense in Cincinnati today is still very good. So if he gets fired, you could absolutely still be a very viable option for Pittsburgh. You might be less likely to be poached as well because he is a former head coach in this league. And he's also very familiar with the teams in the AFC North. So he knows how to attack these defenses and very familiar with the teams in this division. Number 7, Josh McCown. Now, McCown is somebody that's gaining a lot of steam for head coaching jobs there in Minnesota with how well respected he is in that building. He's coming from the Sean McVay tree now, and he's played in every offense under the sun. McCown is one of those famed kind of journeyman quarterbacks that's played in a bunch of different systems, has played in a bunch of different teams and systems and under a bunch of different offensive minds, and he can really compile everything that he knows about the game of football to tailor it to his players, and I think that he would be a really, really good offensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh. Josh McDaniels, another Super Bowl winning play caller up on this list. That's now 3 on this list, and another one made a Super Bowl. So these are all established people. Josh McDaniels is not a leader of men. He's not a head coach, but he got Mike Tomlin to do that. All right, McDaniels is a great, great, great offensive coordinator. He made Mac Jones look like a legit NFL quarterback his rookie year and made the playoffs with him. So Josh McDaniels, kind of an Earhart Perkins, spread it out kind of guy, but I do think he could have success here in Pittsburgh. Scott Turner is a guy to consider as well, Norv Turner's son. And Norv Turner, if you know anything about him and his offense, he is the king of the run and shoot offense. And Scott Turner runs a very similar style of offense. Tried to do it in Washington, didn't really work out with the bad quarterback play that he had to deal with. Now he's the OC in Las Vegas after they fired Luke Getsy. But he's somebody that I think could really fit with Russell Wilson's skill set and could really turn his career around. Then you got Chris Forster, who we talked about earlier. He's the run game coordinator and offensive line coach. If you really feel like you need to turn this offensive line around next year, Forster is somebody that I think could do that. He's done it multiple times with Kyle Shanahan throughout his career. And if he could do it here in Pittsburgh, that would be obviously fantastic for us. Then you got Clint Kubiak, who was a big name last year. He goes to the Saints, absolutely lights up the scoreboard the first 2 weeks, and then they have a bunch of injuries, and that offense just hasn't been the same there in New Orleans. With Dennis Allen out now, Clint Kubiak's going to be a free agent once again. Could he take the job here in Pittsburgh? I certainly think that's a possibility. Brian Dable, I think, is going to get fired. I think he's lost the locker room there after going to Tommy DeVito up there in East Rutherford. I think he's out of town. And honestly, I love how he calls plays, man. I really, really like his play calling philosophy. He throws the ball down the field a lot. I think he would really fit with Russell Wilson. And Dable is also one of these guys that gives the quarterback a lot of responsibility at the line of scrimmage. Russell Wilson is a hardy veteran that can read defenses pre-snap, can get guys in the right alignments, is a great communicator. I think this would be a really good fit with Brian Dable. Plus, I think he's a fit for Pittsburgh. And then Darrell Bevell is my number one choice. He worked with Russell Wilson in the past. I think this would be Russell Wilson's number one choice. And if you can make Russell Wilson comfortable, I think that's good. Plus, he comes from that Mike McDaniel scheme there in Miami that has absolutely wrecked the National Football League over the last 3 years, and I absolutely love his experience. He's a Super Bowl winning play caller. He's worked with Russell Wilson in the past. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. I think if you have to move off of Arthur Smith and get somebody else, my number one pick would be Darrell Bevell. Now, some honorable mentions. We talked about these guys earlier, but all of these guys should be available here. Matt Nagy is currently an offensive coordinator, but like Eric Bieniemy had to go somewhere else to really prove himself. I could see the same thing for Nagy. It looks like Mike McCarthy could be fired in Dallas. We'll see. He's a Pittsburgh guy. Keep your eye on Mike McCarthy. But all these guys, I think, are people that could be considered. Tom Arth, the quarterback's coach here in Pittsburgh currently, is somebody that's really well respected in the Steelers locker room right now. Potentially he could get an upgrade. We know how much Mike Tomlin likes to promote from within. So let me know down there in the comments section, who'd be your guy? Personally, I'd love to see Darrell Bevell replace Arthur Smith if Art does decide to go to UNC. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section, who you'd like to be the next OC of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is, if Art goes to Chapel Hill. Today was a little bit of a longer one, guys, but I appreciate you sticking with me here. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.